Here is a mind map, also from Tony Buzan's book, done by accountants. Again, the quintessential left-brain thinker. Now, this is a very complex-looking thing, but if you count the primary legs, that is, the legs that are coming off of the center of this mind map, you will find that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are only 7 major legs. You can manage an incredibly complex set of ideas and how they relate to each other by using a mind map. Here's one, again from Gabriel Rico, and we're showing you this one because it helps to illustrate the relationship between the mind map and the final piece. Keep in mind she was using it for writing. This is one from a student by the name of Lori Welty. Now, you've had English comp classes like this. Imagine the teacher comes in and says, I want you to do a 500-word essay about wood. Oh my, how exciting. The scary part is you could probably do it. You've learned some skills for being able to essentially BS your way through this kind of thing. That stands for blowing smoke, remember. The thing is, what you come up with is probably going to be fairly predictable, fairly shallow, fairly mechanical. 500 words about wood. Well, in Rico's class, she said first do a mind map centered around the idea of wood, and then write about whatever comes out of that. Write a poem, write a paragraph, write a song, book chapter, whatever it might be. But the writing is based on the mind map, not necessarily directly on the concept. Now, as we look at this map, there are some things that I can see that make sense to me. I would think the arrow would go the other way between wood and splinter, but it sort of makes sense. I would think tweezers would be connected to splinter, but see, it's not my map. It's a map of Lori Welty's mind. As I look at this, though, I don't see a connection between wood and man, or wood, fool, Lake Tahoe. Okay, so it's her map. Let's take a look at the piece of writing that came out of this. And if you happen not to be looking at the screen right now, I will read to you what Lori Welty wrote. Splinter is a terrible word. Its sound is synonymous with the sensation. Jagged, sharp, piercing, like the nagging voice of a dissatisfied wife. That's what she wrote. I remember vacationing in Tahoe. The pier was old, worn, and wooden. The boards as rough as a face full of scabs. Running along it, my foot caught the attention of an angry spike of wood, injecting itself cleanly and deeply into the ball of my foot. If I screamed, it was not from the pain initially felt, but from anticipated sensations. Let's go back and just compare. There's more to the writing, but let's just compare what we're seeing here to the mind map. Go back to the map just a moment. We see things in the map that didn't wind up in the writing. The word tweezers is not there. There's the idea of pain, but there's nothing about a man. There's nothing about a fool. It seems like most of this came from what's inside the circle for Lake Tahoe. Now, this makes sense when you think about the way maps work. If you look at a map of East Tennessee, you will see a little dot on that map, and that dot says Oak Ridge. If you've ever been to Oak Ridge, you know that for a small town, it's an incredibly complex little town. Streets that go off at all kinds of angles. They're not straight. They curve around. They're just matching the geography. A lot of complexity in the streets of that town. And yet all of that complexity is represented by a single dot. Seems like for Lori Welty, Lake Tahoe encompassed most of this stuff. Because think about what you don't see on this mind map. You don't see anything about a pier. You sure don't see anything about boards, old, rough, and wooden, rough as a face full of scabs. Nothing like that there. On the other hand, you look at that map of East Tennessee and you will see a town called Ooltewah. Now, you may have been there, but not too many people have. Just because it's on your map doesn't mean you have to go there. And just because it's on your mind map doesn't mean you have to include it in your writing, or as we're going to make use of it, in your speech. This is just producing raw material. You may or may not have heard us say that speaking is more like what a sculptor does than like what a painter does. Painters take a blank canvas and carefully build up layers of paint until they get to the finished product. Sculptors, on the other hand, will gather quality material and then remove the stuff that doesn't belong. That's more like how really any piece of writing works. It's certainly the way that producing a speech works. You gather good material and then you remove stuff that doesn't fit. Maybe this is one of the reasons that mind mapping helps us better than simply writing a manuscript. This is the end of part 4. Please move ahead to part 5.